just turned 20. Is like, you know, becoming a man.
Is that you?
Yeah.
Wow. You look pretty happy.
I know, it was May 3rd. I wonder what they did with the bullet-ridden cars. Wouldn't they be collector's items?
What was up with that car?
Huh?
Is somebody underneath the car? Or
No, everybody's
hiding behind the car.
Everybody's diving, running. I stood through half of the volley, just staring. Couldn't, and then the bullet hit a sign next to me, and I said, "Oh, these aren't blanks."
What was happening right before this shit happened? They started shooting.
What was happening?
Yeah. I mean, why was there any
Provocation?
reason to shoot people?
No. Everybody realizes that. I mean, the commission said there was, you know, it was totally uncalled for, inexcusable.
Hang on to that.
I was up here somewhere during that. I mean, they could have let us stand there on the hill. We weren't going to go nowhere. I mean, nobody was going to, like, follow anybody. You know, they wouldn't advance on the guard. You know, we were just going to stand on the hill, you know, and ring the victory bell. I mean, and for them to come and, you know, try to disperse us was just, you know, part of their plan to set up the shooting. Because, I mean, there it is. It's, you know, big deal. Huge crowd, you know. What were we doing? Singing Beatles songs. That's the famous picture there, isn't it?
He looks so serene.
Yeah.
Chanting
There's the mafia.
Who's that?
Governor.
Just happened to be here?
No, he came in, you know.
Later?
No, that was before the shootings, I think. It was just an old army barracks that they were going to tear down anyway.
What's all that smoke?
It's the army barracks, ROTC. Yeah. And it's real sketchy as to who burned it down, because there was no students there when it really burnt.
Was that after the shootings?
No, this was the excuse for calling in the guard.
I see.
Perhaps more siding with Republican than Democrat at that time. And I was very immature. And I parked the car and started walking to campus, and I heard the shots about, I would say, a half block off campus.
I thought they were firecrackers. And so I walked onto campus, and when I got there, I ran into some friends near the student union, and they said, "Hey Don, they shot 4 people," and I thought they were joking, and turned out they weren't. And I made a facetious remark, and I went on to class, which of course was canceled.
You didn't care? Or you didn't believe him?
Well, I believed him, but life goes on. You know, that's the way I thought at the time. And so 3 years later, I happened to meet a woman who we'll call Ellen Wilson. She saw an entirely different thing at the time of the shooting than I did. She lived in Prentice Hall, and she went out the back exit of Prentice Hall looking for a roommate. They had been running from tear gas, and she saw some guardsmen, the nearest one about 30 feet away, she says, and they were looking down their rifle barrels, and she saw 2 of the guardsmen fire. And she saw the smoke rise from the barrels. She saw them aiming down the barrels. They were not tear gas guns. They were real rifles, and she saw the recoil on both the shoulders of the two guardsmen who fired. She immediately went back into Prentice Hall, and she was terrified. And then she heard the main volley of shots, and she thought they all came from the troop that she was looking at. Well, let's see where she was. She was right here on Prentice Hall, and this is about approximately where the troops were that she saw. Now, no one admits, or the guard has not admitted, that anyone from this troop actually fired. There were two people who admitted firing rounds that belonged to, this was C Company here near Prentice Hall, and there were two people who admitted firing their weapons from C Company, but they said they were down here with the main contingent that did most of the firing. Now that may or may not be true, but you've got to consider the fact that they said they got lost from their contingent going across the flat, broad commons on a sunny day. They somehow got lost and ended up with these people. And they had plenty of time, since they had already marched down here to the football field and back up this way. They had plenty of time to rejoin their troop had they actually gotten lost, but I very much doubt it. There were two other people in this dormitory who saw the same thing from the lunchroom. The official record shows that 2 shots were fired from Company C. The two were from Richard Love, Richard Luty, and they both claimed that they were lost. Well, isn't that coincidental? The guy who was in command of Company C, a guy named Ron Snyder, said that he got some picked up some nunchucks from a protester on May 4th before the shooting. He also said he got a weapon from the body of Jeff Miller, who was shot dead. And later in court, he recanted both testimonies. And that guy, Ron Snyder, Captain Ron Snyder, also claimed that he heard 2 shots before the main contingent, but he claimed that they were far distant. I would venture to bet 20 years of research that those 2 shots came from his company, and that's my story.
Yes, yes. Okay. Yes, they're probably lying to us about this, like they lied to us about everything. But is there something else that means that I'm not grasping?
That would mean if you look here, here's the parking lot where 10 out of the 13 people were shot, either around the parking lot or here with, that's a good question. So 10 out of the 13 people were shot around here, and you can see that they could have shot from both locations, got them in a crossfire. And the fact is that General Canterbury, who was with this group down here, said that they were being charged on the right flank. Well, up here were hundreds of people on his right flank. They were coming from this direction, they turned and fired here, so it would have been his right flank. So they were far closer to these hundreds of people here, and over here are hundreds of people they could have chosen to shoot. Instead, they fired at the people in the parking lot. And the reason they fired at these people in the parking lot is that these were the protesters that were carrying the black flags. There were only a couple dozen of them. But obviously they planned to shoot because both contingents fired at the same time, approximately, after these first 2 shots. The 2 people who fired here, in order to make it not look like a conspiracy, claimed they shot from down here. My parents were staunch Republicans at this time, and I pretty much was fully in support of the Vietnam War, which was what the protest was all about. And so I, at the time, I changed completely.
I was on the Commons, what they call the Commons, at the time that the shots were fired. I was a classmate of Allison Krause's. I pretty much suppressed occurrences over the years. I was a freshman student, wet behind the ears, 18 years old, felt that the war was wrong and still do. And to that extent, I guess you could call me a protester. We were sitting, as I recall, cross-legged on the Commons at one point and were dispersed by the National Guard for no reason. It was totally nonviolent and peaceful and cross-legged. I mean, what can you do from a lotus position? There was no reason for the Guard to have live ammunition. And I don't blame the Guard's men. I do blame whoever ordered them in there and whoever was in command of them.
I just turned 20. It's like, you know, becoming a man.
Is that you?
Yeah.
Wow. Before this shit happened, they started shooting.
What was happening?
Yeah, I mean, why was there any
Provocation?
reason to shoot people?
No. Everybody realizes that. I mean, commission said there was, you know, it was totally uncalled for.
You look pretty happy.
I know, it was May 3rd. I wonder what they did with the bullet-ridden cars. Wouldn't they be collector's items? I stood through half of the volley just staring, couldn't, and then the bullet hit a sign next to me and I said, "Oh, these aren't blanks."
What was happening right? What was up with that car?
Huh?
Was somebody underneath the car? Or
No, everybody's
hiding behind the car?
Everybody's diving, running.